Hi, I'm Chad, financial planner here in Canada. Recently, I did a video about retiring on $500,000 at age 65 for a couple, and that video seemed to be well received. So I figured it was a great opportunity for me to create that into a bit of a series. So I invite you, the viewer, to comment below what type of scenarios do you want me to do next. The intent is that I'll do videos for different ages, different dollar values, singles versus couples, all kinds of different things. Today, we're going to jump into a single individual, also 65, also with $500,000. Let's get started. So the start of any good financial plan would involve me learning who it is I'm actually talking to, financially speaking. So last time it was Jim and Pam Halpert. This week it is Andy Bernard, who ironically worked in the same office as Jim and Pam. Unlike Jim and Pam, Andy's a single dude, and he's accumulated through his career $400,000 into his RRSP, along with $100,000 into his TFSA. He's moderately invested here, and he's going to be turning 65 January of next year. And he shared with me in confidence that he is absolutely done with work, which is, by the way, a story I hear a lot these days, especially kind of post-COVID. There's a lot more burnout these days than there was maybe 10 years ago. Just like the Halperts here, Andy has a $1 million home that he purchased for $250,000 a long time ago in probably the GTA at those prices. So just like I talk with clients all the time, spending and the actual investments that you have are two sides of the same coin, right? There's the articles that come out that say you need 1.7 million or you need $1 million to retire, things like that. And in some cases, that's absolutely true, but spending is the other side of that. So if you're not spending insanely, you don't need money like that to retire. Andy does not spend a crazy amount. He spends about $4,000 a month. That's after taxes, and that's what he's spending out of his own pocket, $48,000 per year. Here in the baseline, I have the settings to do what the average Canadian would do if they were kind of parachuted into this scenario. So CPP is starting day one next year when he turns 65. OAS does the same. His other assets will provide some of the kind of the missing income. And the first thing that I'll be looking for is years highlighted in red, which start happening around his age 83. What a year highlighted in red means to me when I'm looking here is that we've run into some form of a liquidity event. Either he's fully broke and there's nothing left, or in his case, he's fully out of liquid money and he has to lean on the equity in his home to make ends meet. So if I go here to his estate projection, I can see a couple of things. First off, he's at only 84% goal coverage. Not great. We obviously have some work to do here. But if we go down to his actual estate, he's leaving the $1 million home, which, just as a reminder, I set appreciation on real estate to 0 in my projections because it's not really what we're talking about. And I want to make sure that we're using today's dollar values when talking about real estate long term. I am well aware that that is not going to be the case. His home should appreciate over time. That being said, there's lots of markets that right now are looking very rocky. Anyways, so he's leaving the $1 million estate and he had to lean on $381,000 worth of his equity, whether it's in a reverse mortgage or a home equity line of credit, meaning that his estate's worth $618. 618 is a fantastic goal for an estate value, but he's running into shortfalls at age 83. So like I said, there's clearly work to be done. So let's go do it. So with Andy here, I'm going to start where I almost always start my financial planning with clients, and that's with CPP. If you've seen my other videos, you've heard me refer to CPP and OAS, and if there's a pension present, as foundational income sources, and I always start there. So foundational income source is an income source that is reliable and not linked to a market, like CPP. And the reason I always start there is my theory is that if I can make your foundational income as robust as I possibly can, it should in turn lower your stress in later years because it's taking up a bigger percentage of your spending objective. So here, if I look at delaying CPP to 70, let's look for those shortfall years. It was not pushed at all. Okay, so that's maybe not a fantastic recommendation for the shortfalls, but will it make other impacts for Andy's scenario? Let's take a look at that. If I go to here to compare, and again, you can see the other scenarios coming up, so no cheating, no spoilers. But we can go here and see that delaying CPP to 70 did add 4% to the goal coverage, which is great. And in isolation, the only change made between these two scenarios was the CPP delay, $100,000 impact of the eventual estate. That's hard to believe sometimes, but we're going to look at a little bit of the rationale for why that is. If I come here to the charts area here, I can look at probably my favorite chart, and that's the cash inflow chart for Andy. And I can actually remove other income sources here. If we pick a random year, like when he's 78, for example, in this scenario with CPP delayed, he's receiving $41,534 from CPP and OAS combined. If I go back, find that exact same chart here without the delay, go to that same year, now it's $32,000, meaning that the positive impact of that delay is about $9,000 a year in taxable cash flow. But that's $9,000 per year. Right? The next year's another 9 to 10,000. The next year's another 9 to 10,000. The next year's another 9 to 10,000. You can see why my theory starts to get formed that if I can increase your foundational income as much as I can, that your stress should go down because that cash flow is there and it's not linked to any volatile market. So let's take this foundational income strategy a step further by pushing OAS as well to age 70. Now, I would never recommend only delaying OAS to 70, like and not delaying CPP. The benefits of delaying CPP outweigh the benefits of delaying OAS. So if I'm only going to recommend one, it's going to be CPP. Sometimes I do recommend delaying both, although I will admit it's rare. In this case, we look at that. We've now pushed both of these income sources to 70. I go down. I'm still having shortfalls around 83. So that problem is not really being solved yet. If I go and I compare these two scenarios, yes, we've added 1% goal achievement going from 88 to 89. And we've added about $30,000 to the estate value, but that's future dollars. And so I look at that and think, that's probably not worth it. Delaying that extra income source 5 years for $30,000 may not be worth it long term. So I'm probably going to abandon that recommendation, meaning that we need to start looking at some other ways that we can increase Andy's financial plan here or make it work for him a little bit. And the next place I want to go is his investment strategy or his asset allocation. So let's do that next. So here for Andy, what I did was I shifted his asset allocation from 60-40, 60% being equity, to 80-20. And that'll push his expected investment returns from 4 to 4.5%. And this is a great place for me to stop and just give you a quick reminder that I'm very conservative in my investment return expectations. I do that on purpose. I want to create an ecosystem here in the software that is underperforming what you will get in the real world. That way, 5 years from now, when you revisit my financial plan and you're 5, 6, 10% ahead, you're happy with what we were doing, right? I'm kind of handicapping it in that way. So this investment return does push his shortfall off by 1 year, but I can start to see here that there's going to be some drastic measures required to make sure that Andy's financial plan actually works, because nothing here has really moved the dial very much at all. The next step I take here is to make sure his withdrawal order is optimized, and now I shift it from TFSA early to protecting the TFSA as long as possible. Again, we're not pushing out the shortfall, so I know we're in the territory that something drastic has to happen. So I talk to Andy here, and I say, listen, your financial plan is not working. We can't really crack 90% goal achievement unless we do something drastic. So the options really are find a spouse, because then that allows you to have income splitting and a lot more tax credits. So if that's not really within our control, there's two that are controllable. And those would be either work longer or at some point you're going to need to downsize your house. Looking at Andy was very clear, and he was very clear with me. Working longer is not really on the table right now. So we have to look at selling his house. So that's what we do here. Now, looking back here for a second, we see he's not running out of money or running into liquidity issues until he's 84 years old. And his RSPs don't even drain out until he's in his late 70s. So by no means does Andy need to sell his house right away to make this work. So we can look at selling it into the future. Now, my folks happened to move in the last couple of months. and they're in their early 70s. So that's what I did here is I sold Andy's house at his age 72. He invests as much as he possibly can into his TFSA, and the rest goes into a new non-registered, which I created here, which is essentially just an overflow for his investments. So that gets piled away. And now, without changing anything else, suddenly there's no shortfalls. We are in really good position for that. And in fact, if I go to Andy's estate projection here, he's not only leaving his real estate, which, sorry, I forgot to mention this, he went from $1 million home into a $600,000 home. And in all likelihood, at that stage, it would probably be a condo, right? The advantages of a condo when you're at that age, just lock your door if you want to do some traveling and walk away, nothing to really maintain. But he's also leaving $600,000 of a financial asset. So we've kind of overshot the target now. So with the downsize for Andy here, we now have a ton left over, meaning I can go back and now revisit the actual spending figures and bring some go fun money or extra travel money or whatever it is into the picture for Andy. Even before he sells the home, we can bring that in because we know now that the home is going to be part of his strategic financial process here. So let's take that to the very, very last step here. And we've brought in $15,000 in today's dollars of go fun money and however Andy wants to spend it. And that's inflating along the way. So now we have a scenario where he's intending to sell his home at 72, but from 65 to 75, he's traveling, he's tinkering on Harley Davidsons in his garage, whatever it is that makes him happy, he's spending that money. And I scroll down, once again, we have absolutely no red highlighted years. So let's go and let's compare this scenario to the original baseline. So compared to the original baseline, by delaying CPP, keeping OAS as is, increasing his asset allocation to an 80-20 mix, selling his house at 72, but also jacking up his spending for the first 10, 11 years of retirement, we've gone from an 84% goal achievement to 105. We've overshot the target. This is what we want. If we go down to his estate, he went from leaving no financial assets, $1 million real estate, and nearly $400,000 of debt, to leaving about $120,000 of assets plus his $600,000 real estate, meaning his estate's gone up by $100,000 after taxes and all is settled out. But he has spent an additional $187,000 on himself. That's a big win, and that's a pretty good trade as far as I'm concerned. Now, maybe for you, downsizing the house is not a real option. So maybe if you were Andy in this scenario, we would have to look at delaying retirement, working a little bit extra, and not necessarily working at his current pace, but maybe he could just be working part-time or doing some consulting or just go and do something else that makes a little bit of money. But for Andy, this is what worked best, and this would be the type of thing that I would absolutely recommend. So if it's time for me to review your financial plan and go through this whole process with you, there'll be a link in the description down below. Don't forget to give a thumbs up and a follow for the channel. And until next time, keep planning.